All right, I have Ryan King here with me, who is Careless. Thank you for joining me here today, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Craig. I certainly appreciate it.
Oh, yeah,
Definitely.
thank you for taking the time. All right, so you make music under the moniker Careless, spelled CRLSS.
Yes. Yep.
Yep, and you've got you just released I want to say a new album or EP here last week titled Memory
Yep.
Tap Scars.
Memory Tap Scars was released on Friday, September 11th,
Yep.
and I'm saying that it's an album
Okay.
due to the fact that it clocks in at the amount of time of which the Grammys consider an album. However, it's kind of cheating because an album is 45 minutes to an hour, but that's how they're categorizing it now, and I really feel like in this day and age, at least, well, for my own self, I'm attracted to EP like albums that are, they're not 16 songs, they're not, 22 songs like some of these rap records. They're like, they could be 8, or they could be 11, or they could even be 5. Stuff like that. I don't know why, but it's something that makes me feel like the band is fresh and hungry and essentially, putting all their efforts musically and their ambition into a small package so they're not falsely represented in any way. So I think that's why the EP is real crucial nowadays. Of course, the single runs the world, but to me, I feel like the EP has a lot more value um, as far as being proud of it in the long term, really.
Yeah, and I guess having talked to a lot of artists, I think especially in the digital world where the single does seem to rule everything.
Right.
The EP also kind of is a way for artists to release music in smaller doses, so they don't have to spend as much, but maybe more quickly, so they don't have to spend as much time trying to come up with, say, 8 or 15 songs that really work together. An EP kind of you can turn that around maybe a little bit quicker.
Totally, and that's the biggest challenge for me. Really, is getting those songs to work together and
Okay.
cohesive. Because I love albums of which
Mhm.
there's the concept, and perhaps the beginning is like the end, and there's reasonings for certain parts. Of course, Dark Side of the Moon. That's just a quick example. Everybody knows. I didn't grow up in that time, but I grew up with understanding the concept and the value of a long play,
Mhm.
essentially, an LP. And we've steered away from that quite a bit in 2020 and for longer than just 2020. But I think that with the resurge of vinyl becoming more popular, I think that albums are going to become more relevant again. I do.
No, absolutely. So the new albums is Memory Tap Scars, but this is your second album that you released this year.
Yep.
You released Polly earlier this year in March.
Yep. Polly was released in March, and that was March 7th. And that was actually our last show as well. I am sincerely, explosively grateful for that to have been our last show with such a plethora of great local bands who I adore. I mean, everybody was there. There wasn't a band really from around here that I could think of that didn't participate in it. I mean, it was great. However, after that, everything was shut down. So, yeah, this will be the second album. Like, there has been EP releases and things like that, or I've been going with like 2 tracks sometimes because I'll run into the situation where I do collages of a lot of different sounds, whether it be a sample I created on the guitar or a whole song on the guitar or beat pad synthesizer, what have you. And to get those to be cohesive a lot of times is it literally is my biggest challenge, just because I work so quickly, and I make up new things so quickly, and I ditch stuff so quickly. And I just, that was something that I was kind of taught at MATC, as far as something they had said at the audio engineering program was just, rapidly make music rapidly and keep doing it, and sometimes delete it. And I found that that really made me stronger in being able to come up with something original and creative quickly, but know the difference when I need to be a rigorous editor. Because Memory Tap Scars essentially was 30 songs, and it's 9
Right.
on its release. So there was no lack of material to be released. And just like with Polly, shortly after that, I released 808s and A Lack of Faith, because those were essentially B-sides from both Heartstrings EP, as well as Polly, that I could not find a place for those songs to go. And I just feel like if I had spent this allotment of time on something like that, and it felt like people were kind of enjoying it, I feel like this is the only opportunity I've had to put my music on this level, because, the whole middleman of getting your music onto major streaming platforms was all new to me. I had no idea about DistroKid or anything like that, and Bandcamp was as good as it got until about a year and a half ago is when I first got, on major streaming platforms. So that is something that I never had thought would ever happen, actually. So it's a really big deal for me. I'm going to be 36 years old. I cried when the iPod came out. The realization of having every single CD that I used to lug around in my backpack with my Discman in the palm of my hand, literally, it changed my life.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm just really full of gratitude for all the opportunities that I have had in such a short amount of time, even with the pandemic going on. And
so let's so your music, it's definitely rooted in electronic music, but you also, it's not just electronic music. You're touching on, I'd say psychedelic music, some pop, a little bit of hip hop, touching even more in kind of some ambient electronic. How do you had mentioned you put together all you said you come up with all the, just kind of snippets and ideas, and then start to try and piece them together into songs?
That is one approach that I use.
Mm-hmm.
Depending, a lot of times with hardware, as far as like the 404, which is, it's actually right there, something like that, that would be the approach. It's a beat that is put together through collages of samples. But the thing I found with it is that the sonic sound quality is just not going to be as good as it would be as if it were created, mixed and mastered within the environment of Logic Pro X. It isn't. However, there is a movement of fans out there that enjoy that lo-fi sound, is what they're calling it, the lo-fi sound. And I do recognize that, but for me, I started out by releasing almost like galvanized tracks where I spent, a month on one beat or something like that, where it was just like, I really wanted it to be outrageously perfect. I wanted it to shine like Nirvana Nevermind, regardless of the genre. So, yeah.
So, yeah. And, I guess notice that looking at the, Polly has a little bit shorter tracks. So like a lot of the tracks on Polly are a little bit, around 2 minutes, whereas on Memory Tap Scars, the more of the tracks push over, 3 minutes. Is that something you kind of focus on when you're putting the songs together, trying to get them to match?
Yeah.
You mentioned kind of wanting to have a cohesive.
Yeah, it was purposeful for it to be that way, as far as like, essentially Memory Tap Scars, just like if I was just, generalizing what it is, like a rock record.
Mm-hmm.
3 minutes to 4 minutes and 30 seconds. But, when I'm listening back to them, am I engaged throughout the entirety of that song? And for this album, I felt, that I was. And it's really difficult to muster up self-esteem and positivity and confidence when you are the only person in your band. I
Right.
mean, you're literally patting yourself on the back and you really don't have any feedback from people around you. Sure, my mother, I love her to death, and she will take the time to listen and tell me how she feels about it, and she'll tell me if I'm out of tune and stuff like that. That's fabulous, but at the same time, it's an ongoing struggle for just Ryan to lift himself up and to feel good enough about himself to become vulnerable and release music at all. Because really, that's what it is when you release something like this, especially when you're the only person that contributed to basically the whole thing. Outside of one song, I have one other musician who sings on the whole album, but doesn't play any other instruments. And she is fabulous on Polly, Juliet Jagger. She also does World Music Mondays on WMSC as well. I don't know if you knew that, but however, this past album, I was just kind of moving in a faster and different direction. And she was too. She had learned a lot in the last year and a half about music in general and writing songs and arranging. And she was feeling like she kind of wanted to do more of her own thing as well. So she's actually kind of in the midst of creating on her own terms too. That doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to write songs together and stuff like that. But I mean, it's no secret that, I can take responsibility for putting everything together and then seeking out individuals,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what, let's say, Billy Corgan kind of like put Smashing Pumpkins together. I mean, the woman that he had played, she didn't even know how to play bass at the time from the folklore, from what I understand, things like that. And that's been the story for Careless, the whole time I've been trying to do this, which is, I'm kind of a control freak due to the fact that I have written a lot of music and worked on music alone. So habits form that aren't always positive when you are collaborating with others.
Right. Yeah, you're just it becomes kind of your creative outlet, and I can imagine, it can be difficult to let somebody else in and start to manipulate that creativity.
Yeah, it's severely hard for me. I mean, it's heartbreakingly hard because it's people that are my sincere friends that I neglect and push away due to working on my passion, which is music. So that is a big downside. Even if you're not popular at all or you're not known in any manner, if you really need to make music like I need to make music as a positive outlet to salvage negative emotions, it's just different for each artist who creates and why they do. And it was never meant for me to create music so that I could become a rock star and make a bunch of money and all this and that. Honestly, it was so that I wasn't a murderer or a terrible person. That's why I make music, so I have somewhere to put those emotions and shed them. So I'm really grateful for that though, because if I didn't have that, place to, kind of compartmentalize those thoughts, emotions, and everything, I think I would be a lot, worse off as a person, and my personality in general would be unsavory. I know
Well,
that.
it's fantastic that you're able to have that creative outlet and put it into music that is really catchy, and kind of it runs the gamut in the way that it comes across.
Well, that's a great compliment to me because the relatability factor for listeners is everything to me because I know that that was huge for me and still is when I can relate to the feeling of the vocal delivery or the lyrics, what have you. That means it's insurmountable because it could be in a time in your life where you really needed to hear that or something like that. There's so many factors, I guess.
Yeah, and you kind of have, it's not dark music either. There are some darker themes maybe, but it's not dark, angry music.
Right. I've really, been striving to make it uh, a little bit less experimental and more, I guess, friendly in a way. If not friendly as in like toning anything down of what I thought sounded good or cool or anything that, but just as far as trying to write the type of song that maybe it could be something that I thought of as a timeless sound, something like that. And maybe it's something that we've already heard before, but I want it to be reminiscent of something that makes people feel a nostalgia of positivity, hopefully. You know?
So you mentioned that you are a couple of years ago you were new to the Milwaukee music scene, and you had mentioned that right before the pandemic really hit, you performed your last show as a solo, I guess, as the sole performer and creator in Careless. How do you translate those songs live? Do you have to rearrange them when you perform
Yeah,
live?
yeah, really. I mean, I spent almost about a half a year figuring out how to do exactly that. I mean, I had these songs from Heartstrings EP. I had a label from United Kingdom called Cream Collective release it for me, and then I was like, okay, then what? How am I going to perform these elaborate, beat driven, um, layered songs live and not make it seem like a karaoke jam? That was the biggest thing. And basically, I tried it a couple different ways as far as trying to utilize the computer and Ableton, trying to use Logic, uh, also trying to do the loop pedal with the guitar and do stuff like that. And what it came down to was that I could not rely on the computer. Um, Even the best computer in the world really is not guaranteed to work the way the Roland SP404 works for me. It really is, you can rely on it. So that I definitely needed to do. And um, I needed to find a way to make it different than a band where, when a band's done playing the song, it fades out and people clap. And this was Juliet, is also in the band as the visual person essentially. And it was kind of her idea to do something like this where it's more of a DJ set for a band where there isn't any awkward moments where people clap. People don't necessarily know when the song ends or starts. And I think that was a double-edged sword a lot of times for me because it intrigued people, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of times they didn't necessarily know what song was being performed or if it was a song from a record or something like that. So I did, towards the last probably like 6-7 shows, started to try to introduce the songs within these interludes.
Okay.
And things like white noise or like the fake vinyl sound with the 404. Just do you know what ASMR is at all?
No.
Anyway, it's just like sounds like anything like this sound that this makes. If you were to record it and then put it on a piano roll with a bass, you'd still hear those bass notes, but it'd be like crackling and things like that they give it like an organic touch, I guess. So Yeah.
Well, and that kind of it takes the music and that's neat that you're creating kind of an experience more than
That's
just
what
reproducing
yeah.
sounds,
Yep.
in
I'm
a live.
really trying to. Thank you for saying that.
So do you so you've got a brand new album out. We're talking with Ryan King from Careless. New album's Memory Tap Scars. It's your second
Yep.
of the year. The previous album came out in March, which is titled Polly. You can find you at carelesscollective.bandcamp.com. That's spelled CRLSSCLLCTIVE.bandcamp.com.
Yep, and I just got to point out that not only my own release, I mean, this is one that I can sincerely look anyone in the eye and say, I believe you might like this record because I believe it's decent. Any previous release I've put out, I've always not been very satisfied with. Maybe people enjoyed it, but personally, I hadn't. So this one's special to me because I actually like it. A lot of times, like I had told Juliet, by the time the song comes out, I can't even listen to it because I just worked on it so much that
Right.
I told myself in March when COVID became very apparent that things were going downhill, that I was going to release something by the fall, and
Okay.
that was the plan. And I feel like it's a complete 180 from Polly in comparison to the overall sound. There's still, similar topics and ideas and approaches with, vocal delivery and stuff like that. However, most of the songs on Memory Tap Scars are guitar songs that were written with a guitar that I had essentially just got, that I hadn't even had a chance to perform with at all, which, I mean, it's not a fancy guitar, but everyone knows what it is. It's a Squier
Right.
Jazz Master that Dinosaur Jr.'s Jay Mascis put out and performed. And anyway, this guitar had kind of given me some tones that I hadn't experienced before, and I started writing a bunch of songs in drop D, which I hadn't really ever done. I thought that was the easy way out, but I decided that it didn't have to be hard for it to be good a long time ago.
Right.
The White Stripes showed me that. They really did. So I felt like I would, take a different route than the regular acoustic guitar, because all those electronic songs were written on an acoustic and then translated and composed with, virtual instruments. But this time around, I was really able to embrace a guitar, electric, of which I really know nothing about electric, and one singular pedal, which is a delay sampler DSD2, which is this very old vintage Boss pedal. But what it allows me to do is, in a live circumstance, when you're trying to interlude into another song, it gives you some breathing room because of the swelling feedback it provides from whatever last note you may have played on your guitar. And I can kick it off in time, bringing the beat back in. And I think that's, it gives it more of a hands-on approach when people are watching you perform instead of just pressing buttons. Because as far as my reactions I would get from people, especially this past year at Company Brewery, that was one of the first times I had really brought out the guitar and focused on guitar songs. After that particular show, I felt that there was a level of respect amongst other Milwaukee musicians that I did not have at all prior to, because I feel like they're not wrong for thinking that I was just a button pusher, so I feel like tastefully utilizing electronic equipment is the key. It really is.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned, I can definitely see that where Polly kind of has those shorter tracks. It's more of an electronic album. It still has some of those, I guess, I would term it as that psychedelic feel. It still has that, kind of pop sensibility to it, if you will. You know, songs that have a melody and there's a catchiness to them.
Yep.
Whereas Memory Tap Scars with the longer tunes, it definitely is kind of more of a quote unquote rock record. You know, it still sounds like you, like Carol. You know, it has those underlying. It doesn't lose that Careless, sound, if you will. But
thank you. That was a worry of mine too, from changing such drastic sound palette from Poly to Memory Tap Scars. I was quite worried, just that it wouldn't sound like me after releasing, electronic based stuff for quite a while. So
no, I think it still definitely has that underlying, it has those qualities that it kind of has that. It's all rooted there, the base is where they're built from is definitely, your sound. So.
Well, that's absolutely amazing to hear anyone say that I have a sound. I mean, damn, thank you. Wow.
So yeah, so the new album's Memory Tap Scars, it's and the previous album Poly are both available at your Bandcamp page, carelesscollective.bandcamp.com, which is your collective, or a collective that you helm.
Yeah.
With a lot of other
it's
curated.
It's open to any other Milwaukee artists that need a launch pad, and if anyone buys it, it can be sent to their PayPal. Paper Holland released something with us, which was fabulous too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's going well, but I will be honest and say I'm obviously not focusing on that 100% as I once was. Because I plan to have a follow-up to Memory Tap Scars, and it's just going to be volume 2, just because, like I had said earlier, 30 songs, I don't want to throw them all away.
Right.
So
do you know when do you have any rough dates on that, or?
I am looking towards March again.
Okay.
For like early March is what I'm hoping for, because, normally I'd say much longer, but the songs are quite developed already, quite a few of them. And not only that, there are other, folders I have with, I don't know how many songs that are electronic based as well. So it's really just for me going through all these songs that I've accrued over the last, 5 years, and trying to put them together into something cohesive.
Okay.
Because sometimes on the album, you might hear a song that, was created 5 years ago, and everyone thinks it came out this year, and other times there'll be one that it was the last song written for the record and just barely got it on there, so. But again, I can't say how grateful I am for being able to release this album, Memory Tap Scars, on this level, as far as being on all streaming platforms. The album is, Tidal, Deezer, Spotify, which seems to be the big banger for young adults right now, at least. As well as a plethora of other ones that I don't even know the names of, that DistroKid informed me of, Amazon Music, Slacker Radio, Pandora.
Okay.
So it's out there, and I really hope people get a chance to hear it. I'm not planning or looking to make a whole bunch of money on it. I still work at Whole Foods every day, and I'm glad I do even have a job. So, it allows me to create more Memory Tap Scars, I guess. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you for chatting with us here today. We really appreciate the time.
Yeah, well, thanks for letting me talk at you. Who doesn't like to talk about themselves? I mean, of course.
So yeah, this is Ryan King of Careless. Careless spells her name CRLSS, and you can find them at CRLSSCLLCTIVE.bandcamp.com. That's carelesscollective.bandcamp.com. We'll have a link to it in the playlist as well. So.
Yep, and as well as Spotify and all that other jazz. And yeah, it's great talking to you, Craig. Thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.